Jodie Foster's life began with brilliance and responsibility arriving hand in hand. Born Alicia Christian Foster on November 19, 1962, in Los Angeles, she entered a household shaped by determination rather than comfort. Her father left before she was born, and her mother, Brandy Foster, raised 4 children alone with limited financial resources but immense resolve. From infancy, Jodie displayed extraordinary intelligence, speaking early, reading before most children could form sentences, and absorbing knowledge with remarkable speed. This intellectual intensity became both her gift and her burden. Rather than enjoying a carefree childhood, Jodie was guided toward structure, discipline, and achievement from her earliest days. Her home valued education, independence, and resilience above all else, shaping her identity long before fame entered the picture. What made her story unique was not simply her intelligence, but the way adulthood quietly crept into her life before childhood ever had the chance to fully exist. Fame, before childhood, had a name. Jodie Foster's introduction to the entertainment world came before she could understand what fame truly meant. At just 3 years old, she appeared in a commercial that quickly led to dozens more, transforming her from a toddler into a working professional almost overnight. Film sets replaced playgrounds, and schedules replaced spontaneity. By the time she entered elementary school, she had already accumulated a resume many adults would envy. Directors admired her focus, producers relied on her reliability, and adults often forgot she was still a child. Though she performed with calm professionalism, the emotional cost of that responsibility was quietly building. Childhood for Jodie became something theoretical rather than lived. She learned lines instead of games, discipline instead of daydreaming, and expectations instead of innocence. While the world celebrated her precocious talent, few paused to consider what it meant for a young girl to carry adult pressures before understanding her own identity. Courage forged on unforgiving sets. As Jodie's career progressed, the challenges she faced demanded courage well beyond her years. Film sets often placed her in physically and emotionally demanding situations that tested her resilience. Injuries sustained during filming were treated as obstacles to overcome rather than signals to slow down. Praise followed her determination, reinforcing the idea that endurance was expected, not optional. These experiences taught her early that strength was synonymous with silence and professionalism. Though she never publicly complained, the emotional impact lingered beneath the surface. The industry applauded her toughness, but rarely acknowledged the vulnerability behind it. Each role added to her reputation as dependable and fearless, yet quietly stripped away layers of childhood softness. These formative years shaped Jodie into someone remarkably capable, yet also deeply self-contained. The courage she developed was real, but it was born not from choice, rather from necessity in a world that demanded excellence without pause. Success that carried heavy shadows. By her teenage years, Jodie Foster had achieved a level of recognition few performers ever reach. Roles that required emotional complexity brought critical acclaim and lasting recognition, yet they also placed her in narratives far removed from youthful innocence. The industry marveled at her depth, but the emotional weight of these performances stayed with her long after filming ended. Fame elevated her career while complicating her inner world, forcing her to process mature themes while still forming her own sense of self. Success became a double-edged sword, offering validation while deepening isolation. Though celebrated publicly, she often felt emotionally guarded, learning to separate her private self from her professional image. These years accelerated her maturity in ways that left little room for experimentation or mistakes. While audiences saw a rising star, Jodie experienced success as something demanding constant emotional control, reinforcing the belief that strength meant never revealing how deeply things affected her. Seeking identity beyond the spotlight. Determined not to be defined solely by fame, Jodie made a deliberate choice to step outside Hollywood's expectations. Pursuing higher education became an act of self-preservation, a way to reclaim autonomy and intellectual freedom. College offered structure without performance, achievement without applause. Yet even there, the weight of public attention followed her, reminding her that anonymity was never guaranteed. Still, she persisted, immersing herself in literature, analysis, and academic rigor. Education grounded her, reinforcing the idea that her value extended beyond her on-screen presence. This chapter of her life represented a quiet rebellion against the industry's tendency to consume young talent entirely. Rather than retreating from her identity, she expanded it, building a foundation rooted in thought, discipline, and personal growth. It was here that Jodie began redefining success, not as visibility, but as balance, depth, and self-knowledge. Reinvention through art and discipline. Returning to acting after this period required courage of a different kind. Jodie faced skepticism, rejection, and uncertainty, reminders that the industry rarely waits patiently for those who step away. Instead of chasing approval, she chose roles that reflected honesty and emotional realism. These performances were not designed to please everyone, but to express truth. Through discipline and preparation, she transformed vulnerability into strength, allowing her work to speak louder than expectations. Recognition followed, not because she demanded it, but because her commitment to craft was undeniable. Her performances resonated deeply, shaped by lived experience rather than ambition alone. This phase of her career was defined by intention, restraint, and integrity. Rather than reinventing herself to fit the industry, she reshaped her career to reflect who she had become. Success returned, but this time on her own terms, grounded in authenticity rather than momentum. Protecting love and private joy. Away from cameras and accolades, Jodie Foster built a life centered on privacy and protection. Having grown up under constant observation, she fiercely guarded her personal world. Relationships, family, and motherhood became sacred spaces rather than public narratives. She worked deliberately to shield her children from exposure, ensuring they experienced childhood without the pressures she endured. Home became a place of routine, warmth, and emotional safety, far removed from the demands of celebrity. Love, for Jodie, was expressed quietly through presence rather than spectacle. Though her personal life occasionally surfaced in public conversation, she never allowed it to define her. Instead, she modeled the possibility of fulfillment without performance, proving that happiness does not require validation. Her devotion to family reflected a deep understanding of what she herself had missed, and her commitment ensured that her children would grow up knowing stability rather than scrutiny. Embracing truth without performance. Later in life, Jodie Foster chose honesty without spectacle, sharing aspects of her identity with grace and restraint. Her approach reflected years of living authentically without explanation. Rather than seeking approval, she allowed truth to exist calmly, trusting that those who mattered would understand. This moment was not a declaration, but an acknowledgement, reinforcing her lifelong belief that privacy and authenticity can coexist. With a partner who shared her values, she built a home rooted in creativity, trust, and mutual respect. This chapter represented freedom not from secrecy, but from fear. Having spent years protecting her inner world, she now lived openly without surrendering control. It was not a reinvention, but a continuation of the same principles that guided her life: integrity, intention, and emotional honesty. Love became something lived rather than explained, reinforcing her belief that fulfillment grows quietly, not loudly, a legacy defined by endurance and grace. Today, Jodie Foster's legacy extends far beyond awards or performances. It is defined by endurance, discipline, and the quiet strength of choosing self-respect in an industry that often demands sacrifice. She remains selective, thoughtful, and grounded, valuing depth over visibility and meaning over momentum. Her life reflects the truth that greatness is not born from ease, but from navigating hardship with integrity intact. She transformed early responsibility into wisdom, early fame into perspective, and early loss into empathy. Jodie Foster's greatest achievement is not longevity, but balance. She proved that it is possible to grow up in the spotlight without being consumed by it, to succeed without surrendering oneself, and to live fully without constant applause. Her story reminds us that true brilliance lies not in perfection, but in resilience, and that the most powerful role she ever played was simply being herself.